Good morning. Can anyone hear me? My name is Kim Morgan. I'm the Communications and Outreach Officer for Biochemical Engineering. I can see the little symbol going, so I presume you can hear me.
I can hear you, yeah.
Great, thank you, Steffi. We can hear Steffi as well. Okay, I'm just going to pass you straight over to Brenda and Maria here, and they're going to kick off. We're going to disable the webcam whilst they're speaking and giving the presentation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A at the end. Steffi, Brenda will introduce you as and when. Is that okay?
Okay.
Great. We'll just swivel this around.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. So, hello from Bloomsbury. My name is Brenda. I'm the admissions tutor for biochemical engineering, and I'm a lecturer in this department. And this morning, I'm joined by Maria Peral.
Hello.
So, she's one of our alumni, and she will be taking some of your Q&A as well as presenting her kind of journey through biochemical engineering. So, I'm just going to switch off the webcam so that you can see the slides, and we'll take you through a short presentation to introduce the department. Okay, so as I said, this is a webinar about careers in particular for biochemical engineers. And many of you will be joining us because you are interested in learning a little bit more about biochemical engineering and figuring out what you can do with a degree in this subject. So just for some of you who are maybe less familiar with our department, I wanted to introduce to you what exactly is biochemical engineering, because it's a question I get asked quite a lot. So the way I like to explain it is that biochemical engineering, it's a very interdisciplinary subject. We started off very much as part of the chemical engineering department here at UCL, and we share many things in common with chemical engineers. So, for example, we do the same mathematics. We look at thermodynamics, mass transfer, fluid flow, which are sort of core engineering fundamentals. However, where we differ is how we apply those concepts. So rather than looking perhaps at things like the petrochemical industry or oil and gas, we're really focusing on the biotechnology sector. And I'm going to explain to you during this webinar exactly all the different applications of this. So we take these engineering fundamentals and we apply them to biological systems. So this might be relevant when we think about how to maintain oxygen levels in a stem cell culture, perhaps to regenerate tissues for retinal repair, or how we mix a fermenter, indeed, when we're making a recombinant protein. And all of these things are very important because when we think about how we scale up and manufacture with biology, we need to understand a lot of the engineering principles that go behind that. So UCL has really pioneered this subject, and indeed we were one of the first departments to offer an undergraduate program in this area. So we believe it's very exciting, and it's certainly a growth sector. So if you are interested in studying, we offer 3 routes through our degree program. So we have a BEng and an MEng program for those of you who are interested in the engineering route. And for those of you can find more details about the A-level requirements on our website, but for both of those you'll require an A and A-level maths. If you're not studying maths but you're still interested in the subject, we offer 2 BSc programs in bioprocessing, and these enable you to get a lot of the same fundamentals, perhaps taking a different emphasis through. So one is a science and engineering focused one, so you would take more modules in sort of chemistry and genetics, things like that. And another one is a business and management route, so that's for those of you who are interested in how the business behind biotechnology might work. So as I mentioned, we are one of the first biochemical engineering programs, and we're one of only 2 in the UK. So what we find is the industry really look towards UCL, and our graduates are very highly sought after. Now, if you stay for the 4 years of the MEng program, we offer a really wide range of options, and we find that this helps people kind of define what they might like to do in their careers, and it gives them another year to perhaps experiment or have a bit of a taste of a number of things. So on the MEng program, you can choose to do a research project within a lab group here at UCL if you take the MEng biochemical route. you can do the final year with chemical engineering, and so you'll take some more of their kind of process type modules over there. There's a route to do an MEng with business and management. So again, that's much more focused on looking at commercialization and business planning in this sector. You can choose to study abroad. UCL have a huge number of partnerships with different institutions worldwide, and you will also undertake a research project there. Or you can choose to spend your final year in industry, and Maria is going to tell you a little bit more about her experience on that program as well. So this is actually a new route that we're beginning to pioneer by letting our engineering students take this in their 4th year instead of in the middle of their course, as we found that it sort of reflected the kind of feedback that we were getting from the industry sectors. One important thing to bear in mind, certainly if you're an A-level student and you're looking at different engineering degrees, is the fact that we have IChemE accreditation for both of our BEng and MEng programs at the relevant levels. Now what that means is it's a first step towards getting a chartered engineering qualification. And this is something that's quite important if you want to go and continue working in the kind of chemical and biochemical engineering sector. It is recognised globally, and it's really a kind of benchmark to state how competent and committed you are to the field. As you can see, chartered engineers generally earn more over their careers. If you are on the BSc route, you can choose to take an MSc in biochemical engineering, and that will then again equally get you on the path towards chartership. So what kinds of things do biochemical engineers make? We're all kind of familiar with what kind of civil engineers or mechanical engineers might do, but what do we make? So I've divided it up into kind of 4 broad categories, but really there are sort of endless examples. An area that we're extensively involved in is the production of biopharmaceuticals. So these may be vaccines, they may be antibiotics, or they may be immunotherapies. And Maria is going to chat to us a little bit later about some of her work in developing the processes to manufacture some of these drugs. If you are studying A-level biology, or perhaps you've read about this in the news, the area of stem cell therapy and cell and gene therapy is really an emerging and very exciting area. And what we do as biochemical engineers is we get involved in how exactly we might culture cells and tissues for these kind of regenerative medicines. Again, a very exciting and emerging field that's sort of very much making the translation from research to commercialization at the moment. In terms of things like renewables, biochemical engineers are involved in either developing or manufacturing alternatives to petrochemicals. So this may be things like bio-based fuels, like biobutanol or bioethanol or biodiesel. Or it could be working on things such as bio-based plastics or alternative biomaterials. Finally, there's a huge and sort of emerging and very exciting sector which is opening up through the kind of use of synthetic biology. And this is really ripe territory for those of you who are excited about the idea of working at a biotech startup or perhaps a small company where they may be developing new technologies for perhaps biomaterials. If you take companies like Modern Meadow pioneering bio-based leather, things like bioremediation and other kinds of applications where we're starting to harness the power of manufacturing with biology. So typically, what does a biochemical engineer get involved with? So we're not, we're usually around at the beginning of the journey of something like a pharmaceutical. And we use molecular biology, but we may not have perhaps discovered the protein or molecule itself. But what we're involved in is actually translating this from an idea into a real product. So we're very pragmatic, we're very hands-on, but we're also people that have to deal with quite a lot of risk and uncharted territory in what we do, because quite often we're making or manufacturing something for the first time. So perhaps if we take the example of a drug, someone has discovered a new drug target, a new protein that perhaps has some therapeutic application. And this is developed through the kind of very early screening process. It might be handed over then to a biochemical engineer to look at how we might scale up the manufacture. So first of all, we would have enough material to do clinical trials. And then secondly, how we would make enough to actually manufacture this product, and looking at how much it will cost, how we can manufacture things safely, how we can meet the regulatory requirements to supply drugs to governments or health bodies, and also looking at the kind of technical hurdles that are that need to be overcome. So while it might be very simple to make a few grams of something in the lab, it might be much more complicated to make it at kilograms or even ton scale when we begin to scale it up. So we need to understand the biology, but we also need to understand the engineering factors behind. And quite often these projects are a huge amount of risk for a company and require a huge amount of financial commitment too. So just to give you an idea of what this might look like, perhaps we might look at upstream developments, that's culturing cells, whether they're bacterial cells, mammalian cells, stem cells, or even algal cells in some cases, and looking at how we change that from something that's only maybe milliliters right up to something that's thousands of liters. We may work in downstream processing, looking at the separation and purification. So how do we recover our valuable product? So we need to separate it, first of all, from the cells that it's maybe inside. We might have to break the cells open, and then we need to do a lot of different processing steps to be able to recover selectively our product so that it might be safe to inject into someone's body. So again, taking all the principles of biology, chemistry, as well as engineering to manufacture something. So in terms of what this involves learning about, if you were to study on the degree, it's a little bit of everything really, and it's a very, very interdisciplinary subject. So if you're the kind of person who loves biology but you don't want to give up your maths, perhaps you're interested in physics but you want kind of a new application in the life sciences, it's very, very suitable for you. It does make the degree quite challenging. It's quite fast paced as you have a lot of ground to cover in a vast number of areas, but it's very rewarding when you're able to put together the pieces of the puzzle, especially on things like the design project. So what kinds of industries can you work in with a degree in biochemical engineering? So first and foremost, the biotechnology sector. People who are working in sort of stem cell therapy or pharmaceuticals are desperate for biochemical engineers, and we have the right skill set to work in a number of different areas within either process development or manufacturing. In terms of large industry, many of the petrochemical companies do actually have biofuels research that is ongoing. So again, this is where we can contribute with scale up and also research. Either specialised industrial biotechnology companies, perhaps working in the bioeconomy, manufacturing green alternatives to kind of commodity chemicals. But also there are other sectors which do take our graduates, and for which our graduates are very well qualified. So in particular, the finance sector and consultancy. If you think about the pharmaceutical industry, it's a major, major player. Having this in-depth knowledge of how it works from the inside out is a huge advantage when it comes to applying for jobs, especially if there's a specialised branch where they're looking at clients, large clients in the pharma industry. Topics such as patent law. Patent law is a very, very important area for the biotech sector because obviously of the stakes involved. And again, understanding some of the process aspects of this are key. So some people do a law conversion after the degree programme. And many of our students go on to do doctoral research, and this really reflects the fact that the field is quite young and emerging, and the opportunities to do PhDs or engineering doctorates are quite good. So just to give you a bit of a wordle here as to where our graduates go. Some people obviously go into the city, and again, a lot of people are going into kind of research and innovation type roles, whether that's in industry or whether that's in academia. So just to have a look at some of the Unistats data on our recent graduates. So the average salary for those who report it is about £30,000 6 months after starting the course, which is around about in the right region. For others who have taken a similar degree programme in the UK. So the good news is about 85% of people go on to work or further study. You know, as you can see, many people are kind of gainfully employed quite quickly after finishing the degree course. And there's a number of reasons for this. So the first reason is because this is a growth sector, really demand outstrips supply at the minute in terms of the number of people who are qualified to work in it. Because our graduates have a specialist skill set, they are in demand, and we have a great alumni network, as I'll talk about later, who are always looking out for new recruits. There is lots of opportunities to do research, whether it's in a company or whether it's at a university. And finally, because you have an engineering degree, in particular from UCL, we have a huge amount of emphasis on problem solving, leadership, team working skills. So you are a bit of an all-rounder. So that means in terms of things like the city, and they love engineers because they have this kind of can-do mentality and very good at sort of solving problems on the fly. In terms of some of the information that UCL has collected on our recent graduates from our BSc degree. Now this is a relatively new degree, so we're always the kind of information on graduates only just emerging now as people have finished the programme. So we've got a couple of people who've left to go on to do management consultancy or business analysis at sort of major banks. We have another person who's gone on to do industrial relations at a healthcare company, and a few people who've gone on to do further study, whether it's a master's in infectious diseases or health management. So as you can see, the degree kind of equips you to quite a broad spectrum in terms of what you would like to do next. From the engineering degrees, the BEng or MEng programme, we also have people going on to do management consultancy and business, become business analysts in places like PwC. And as you can see, and a lot of people move into actually working in the pharmaceutical sector, taking up jobs at GlaxoSmithKline or Eli Lilly. Again, a lot of people will go on from the BEng programme to do further study, whether that's an MSc in more sort of chemical engineering or looking at manufacturing. We have one person who's gone on to do graduate studies in law, and then a number of people who've gone on to pursue engineering doctorates or PhDs in biochemical engineering. So as you can see, pretty much reflects some of the kind of things we've just discussed, which is it's a very broad base, and it enables you to then choose the route that you would wish to specialise in. And during the degree, you get a bit of a taste and a bit of flavour of all of these different aspects. And you can then begin to tailor your degree through the options you take and internships that you do to kind of equip you for the route that you would like to take it forward with. So I just want to give you a few examples from alumni, and I'm going to kick it off with alumni called Tom Sugden. So Tom is actually, he's a biochemical engineer at a company called Finesse at the moment, looking at, they supply some specialised equipment into the biopharmaceutical sector. He has kind of given us a little bit of a timeline of his journey through biochemical engineering. So I thought I might share that with you this morning because I think it's quite a nice example of how you can take this degree, travel, work globally, but also how powerful our alumni network is. So Tom had taken a summer placement back in 2005 while he was still doing the undergraduate degree. He did the BEng in biochemical engineering. He had met somebody from a company called Sartorius who had come in to judge a poster presentation. He'd made contact with them, followed it up, and he was able to do a summer internship at the company. He decided, or he realised quite quickly, that he was very fond of the kind of practical side of the engineering aspects, and he loved design. So he was actually the winner of our Best Design project, and he graduated in 2006. And he used this as a bit of a springboard to secure a graduate role at Jacobs Engineering. So this is a general engineering firm, and then he found himself kind of working in teams, looking at facility design, looking at how to make manufacturing plants safe. And he got exposed to many different sectors through this role. So if you take a job at a general engineering firm, you get to be quite versatile. And so you might be working on pharmaceuticals one moment, you might be working on biofuels the next. You'd be applying lots of your kind of core design skills. In 2010, he decided that he would quite like to spend a bit of time in Australia. So he took a job with a company called CSL, and they were manufacturing flu vaccines. So he was looking at how they could produce flu vaccines in Australia. So we're looking at the manufacturing plant from that. Some of you might know that this is made out of eggs. It's quite an interesting process. So after a year working down there, he had returned to London and he took up a job at a consultancy called Exmoor Pharma. And this was fantastic for him because he got to work on a lot more kind of in-depth projects. So, for example, he delivered the first biosimilars plant in Iceland. And so as you can see, as his career progresses, he gets more responsibility and he begins to work and take on more complex engineering projects. So in 2015, he got to spend some time in San Diego as he joined Finesse, and that's where he remains today. But I just had a couple of quotes from him because we're going to put up some careers case studies on our website. So that you can read a little bit more about other people's journeys through the degree program. But I think what he has used quite actively is the power of networking. So to get the job in Australia, he had talked to some of the staff here who were able to connect him with a company over there. He's working with many alumni presently in his roles. So he will always stress the power of networking, and what we try to do here is get as many industry individuals and professionals to come in to judge presentations, to come in and give talks, so that you constantly get exposed to these people, but you can also make contacts and use that in your own professional development while you're here. Now, so I'm going to stop talking for a minute and I'm going to let Maria present her journey through biochemical engineering. So she's a much more recent graduate. Maria, do you want to explain what you've been doing?
When I finished my A-levels, knew that I was interested in science, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. So I thought biochemical engineering sounded interesting enough because it had all these different aspects. That I was good at physics, I was good at maths, but I also liked biology. So to be honest, at the time I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I think now it was kind of good luck for me because I really am enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm really glad I did choose this degree. I graduated, so I did the M.Eng in biochemical engineering, and I took a year out to do a year in industry. And then I graduated in 2016. And after that, I went on to work at Purelight. This is a company that manufactures chromatography resin, and you might have Brenda mentioned before. These are used to purify proteins. So these proteins are drugs, so they have to be very pure to go into people. So that's why I was working with different customers to help them optimize their processes, to improve how they do their purification, make it suitable to scale up to manufacturing. So on an everyday kind of basis, I'd be in the lab, setting up my experiments, running everything, making sure they were doing what I wanted them to do, but also always keeping in contact with other team members, with the customers, always communicating and seeing how to solve a problem. It was quite a good experience for me, because I realized in my M.Eng in the final year that I really enjoy doing research and I like being hands-on in the lab. So it was great from that. I also got to travel a bit. I went to Iceland for work, and that was a great couple of days. But after that, I decided that I wanted to carry on with the research, but do a bit more in depth. So I came back to UCL just in October, a couple of months ago, and I've started my engineering doctorate. So here I'm looking at how to optimize the manufacturing process of antibodies. And you might know that antibodies are now very popular. That's the word. Many are used in cancer therapies. So there's a lot of demand out there. So we're just looking at how to make the process better and more efficient.
Okay.
Kind of me.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions,
Yeah.
Maria. So when you graduated, how did you find your first job? Did you apply, or did you do it through a contact, or how did you find the position?
So I had applied for a PhD at the time, but unfortunately I didn't get it. But the company then contacted me. This was a PhD with the company, and they contacted me and said, "Do I want to come work for them?"
Oh, nice.
So I think it worked out quite well because I got the industry experience and I got to see what was out there. And now coming back, I've seen the manufacturing processes and how it works. I can apply that better to my PhD, what I'm working on at the moment.
Okay, that's great. And what would you say from the degree program, what really helped you in terms of like preparing you for a job in industry?
I think having kind of the broad knowledge and having the lab experience, I think that was very helpful because you get to see all the different equipment that people are actually using in industry. So we have all of that here. You can really get the hands-on experience, but this sort of research was what I wanted to do. But there's so many different things, like the design project for more engineering, people who enjoy that more. It's so many different things that they all add up in the end.
Great. Okay. We'll come back. We're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions for Maria, of course, she'll be more than happy to take them. So I'm just going to now introduce Steffi. Steffi, are you with us? So Steffi is actually at UCB in Slough. So she's graduated and she's now working in industry. So this is a little slide just to introduce some of her background. So Steffi, do you want to introduce yourself and perhaps take us through your background?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm currently working in UCB in Belgium, just south of Brussels. Similar to...
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No problem. Similar to Maria, in terms of my A-level subjects, I completed biology, chemistry, maths and physics. I was really intrigued by the sciences and maths, and because my physics was a little bit weaker than my other subjects, I always knew I wanted to do an engineering degree, but because of the physics, I tried to look at engineering degrees which were a little less focused on the physics side, and that's where I found biochemical engineering, and from that moment on I knew that's what I wanted to do, and so I applied for UCL. I completed the MEng biochemical engineering degree from 2010 to 2015 when I graduated. The reason I did that across 5 years is because I also took out a year between my bachelor's and master's to complete a year in industry, which I actually completed here at UCB as well in the UPS department, so Upstream Process Sciences department. And there I was working on process development with mammalian cells. Following my graduation, I actually managed to secure a position within UCB in UPS, so the same department I was working in previously. This started with or as an associate scientist position, and although my contract was in Belgium, I actually completed a 3-month secondment from August to end of October, which was in Slough. So there I was working on the bacterial upstream process sciences, and then on my return I came back to the mammalian site. And last year in April, I then had a promotion up to the scientist position. In terms of a overall day, what does it actually equate to? Well, we're talking about a 40-hour working week, and depending on your responsibilities and your level within the hierarchy, you're looking at associate scientists and scientists are about 60 to 80% in the lab, and we obviously have a lot of documentation to complete. For example, reports on the batches and experiments that we've conducted. Obviously, the preparation of those experiments, in addition to then the communication between the project teams to ensure that the results are discussed and analysed correctly and in depth, but also across the different departments. In terms of responsibilities, we're actually looking at responsibilities which cover a wide range of different aspects, including obviously the execution of experiments. So in my role, for example, we run experiments from small scale, as Brenda was saying, from 15 milliliters up to 200 litre scale. And following that, we also have project management opportunities, for example, leading specific projects, whether that's in terms of actual lab work or lab projects, so innovation projects, or potentially more in terms of IT, so digitalization. And then a key aspect, as Tom mentioned in his slides, actually, it's with respect to networking. So not only is networking important outside of your role and your job, but it also remains very important inside a business, because you have to be able to communicate and network with people from different departments.
Okay. Yeah. It's really interesting. So Steffi, are you able to tell us, perhaps it's quite confidential, but what kinds of products are you working on at the moment?
I can't tell you which products we're working on, but I can tell you that UCB is focused on products which target drug indications for immunology in the central nervous system. So there are a number of products already on the market, but only one of which is currently a biological, which is Cimzia, and that's actually for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh wow! So it's really, really important stuff. So I think probably in terms of our sector, it is quite specialised in terms of the things that we're manufacturing, but the end applications are things that many of us can relate to, so things like cancer therapeutics or arthritis treatments, but it can range to things that are very specialised, what we call orphan drugs, isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's when it becomes interesting, because when you're talking about orphan drugs, you're obviously reducing the timelines for your development, which means that you need to complete all of the different activities, but in a much more compressed timeline. So overall, a drug development process lasts anywhere between 15 to 20 years. But when you're talking about an orphan drug, obviously you can get reduced timelines from regulators, and there you're maybe potentially skipping one of the clinical phases. So usually you have to do toxicology phases, so preclinical trials, then phase 1, 2, 3. But actually with an orphan drug, you can actually skip the phase 2, so it becomes a phase 1 to phase 3 directly. So that leads to a lot more challenges in terms of development and making sure your process and all of your analytical aspects are ready for launch.
Okay. That's great. Okay, Steffi, I'm just gonna wrap up at the end of the presentation. Then we're gonna open up for Q&A. So please stay with us for a little bit longer, so we can do some Q&A with you at the end.
Sure.
as we touched on before, our alumni network is one of our key assets, and it's one of the really beautiful things that it's such a small and specialised industry that we tend to stay in touch with each other, but we also can use this to as a sort of platform to launch your own career as well from the department. So 2 years ago we had our first alumni event. As the department's just about to celebrate 20 years of an undergraduate programme. So as I said, we're still quite new. But these are just some of the companies where our alumni have gone into. So no matter what you're kind of considering, there's usually somebody that you can connect to through a member of staff or through an event, and you can reach out to them as sort of former UCL biochemical engineers. And yeah, so we all really enjoy getting together and having this sort of great network that's all kind of come out of this one tiny place in Bloomsbury. So just to kind of finish off with a couple of profiles of people who have taken biochemical engineering in two very different directions in the biotech sector. So this is Professor Barry Buckland. So he did a PhD in biochemical engineering back in 1974. So back at that time, you couldn't do an undergraduate in biochemical engineering. It didn't exist at that time. So he's one of the kind of early people in the department. After he left UCL, he joined Merck, which is a large pharmaceutical company, and he really built up their bioprocess R&D group. So this led to the manufacture of quite a lot of their sort of big blockbuster products. So you may have heard of things like Gardasil. And you may be familiar with some of the sort of vaccines that he has pioneered. You may have even had some of them yourself, to be quite honest. So he has really overseen the manufacture of all of their clinical supplies to get these drugs from sort of just an idea right into manufacturing. So it's a huge amount of responsibility. And what the lovely thing about Barry is that he comes back quite frequently to lecture within the department and sort of share his expertise. So as I said, the Alumni Network is a beautiful thing because we get the insights from people who've gone off into very different sectors and can share their kind of very practical and hands-on experience with biochemical engineering. So moving to someone who is right at the other end of the scale, perhaps in terms of the stage that they're at. So this is Ewan Roberts. I actually went to visit Ewan on Monday at his company called Puridify, which he co-founded with another alumni from the department. And this was an idea that had spun out of someone's PhD. And they work on kind of membranes for chromatography. So this is to, again, as Maria said, selectively purify proteins. They're using a novel technology. They have some patents on it, and the business is doing really well. So they've just been acquired by a larger company called GE. So it's a really exciting time for a company that really started off as just a couple of people who were using the department as an incubator space, and then now have spun out and have their own sort of labs in Stevenage. So the company has grown right up to 17 people, and I'm sure it's going to grow even further now they are expanding the business. So one thing that UCL is very hot on is encouraging entrepreneurship. So this is not the only spin out the department has fostered, and there's companies like Synthase and who have sort of begun early days within the department looking at kind of aspects of synthetic biology or translational research, and then they have gone on to kind of grow and secure investment themselves. So if you're of an entrepreneurial mindset, this could be quite a nice place for you, as you're able to get not only the scientific and engineering training, but there's also a lot of kind of emphasis on how you do the business planning and the commercialization. So if you are wondering what kind of careers are out there and you want to kind of keep an eye on what's happening with the kind of biotech industry in general, there's quite a few places that you can look. So in Nature Biotechnology, every quarter, they present kind of big picture of the jobs available, which companies are growing, which companies have got acquisitions or mergers, and who might be recruiting. And you can do a bit of a follow-up then to check these companies' job pages and see what's going on. And that'll give you an idea of the kind of salaries and the kind of job roles that there are available. You can keep up with specialist publications. So I've just given you an example of Genetic Engineering News, where, you know, again, they might be talking at a more technical level about the kind of new trends that are emerging within the industry. So it gives you an idea of where you might like to position yourself with a degree in biochemical engineering. And finally, if you want to look at the kind of very hot new sort of SynBio startup world, there's platforms like SynBio Beta that have really active news digests and social media, and so you can begin to see what is happening in terms of that kind of biotech startup world as well. And again, all of these companies are growing, securing investment, and are sure to be recruiting then as a follow-on. So if you have any questions about admissions, any of the kind of practical questions about what you need to get into the degree, or any particular worries about the course content, you can always contact me as the admissions tutor. We've tried to put as many FAQs as possible on our website as well for you if you want to look around. And now what I'm going to do is I will open up for questions now for the last 15 minutes, so we can hear a bit from Steffi and from Maria. So if you have anything you'd like to know about any aspect of the degree, whether it's studying, whether it's life afterwards, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I will probe them for what their experiences were in the degree course. So we'll start up our webcam again so that you can see us. Okay, so while we're waiting for some questions, perhaps Maria, so you had all the science A levels, so you had quite a good background. What did you find what was the hardest thing about the degree?
I don't know. I think I didn't really enjoy the chemistry side as much. That probably was reflected in the fact that I didn't do that well in A level. So I didn't think it was particularly hard. It's a lot of information to take in, but it's not too overwhelming. It's you just manage your time a little bit.
Yeah, there's always time management. Yeah,
there's no reason why anything would be a problem.
Yeah. What about you, Steffi? What did you find the most challenging aspect of the undergraduate?
That's going back a couple of years now, so I'm going to have to get some working. Overall, I would agree with Maria in terms of time management. It really comes down to that because the way university works is very different to school. So obviously we have a fewer number of lectures, but you really have to organize yourself outside of those lectures to complete the assignments and do the background reading that's required. However, in terms of the complexity of the topics or the topics covered, I would say I think it depends on your strengths, but you can always find help and support from other students who are in the same situation and covering the same tasks. I would say that one of the most challenging aspects from my side would have been thermodynamics, although as soon as it was understood exactly what the equations were referring to, and you actually take time to understand based on the lectures and also the books that have been suggested, it's all feasible to get through.
Okay, that's great. So Mariam, hello Mariam in St John's. She would like to ask a question about the course is quite heavily focused on research. I guess it's a new and emerging field, so we are quite research intensive. But Maria and Steffi as well. Maybe start with you, Maria. Have you always enjoyed lab work and the research aspect?
So obviously before coming to UCL, I had no idea what research really involved and what was involved in doing lab work. But having the research project in the last year, I found that it was really kind of getting into my own and planning my own work and getting in the morning early enough to set up things and go to lectures and come back and look at all the data and see what was happening. So I found that quite fun, actually.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. But you're saying the department is very research focused, but that's because there's so much going on in the area, and really UCL is the place to be if you want to do biochemical engineering, because so many people are working in it, so many ideas coming from here.
Yeah. Steffi, did you always enjoy lab work?
I'm going to be careful how I answer this question. First of all, I'm not from looking back as to what the degree was like, I'm not convinced, or I'm not sure that it's heavily focused on lab work. The first 2 years we have a number of practicals which we do complete. However, there is a lot of theory as to how upstream process sciences work, for example, or downstream process sciences. You have the chemistry, the biochemistry, the thermodynamics. So those aspects are very, very theoretical. There's a lot of lectures and only a couple of hours of lab work. So actually, until I did my year in industry, I only had a short amount of time in the lab, and I didn't really know what it meant, like working in the lab, being 60-70% of your time doing an experiment, arranging, organizing. So before my year in industry, I really didn't know what to expect. But when I was here in Belgium, it was interesting. It was enjoyable. I really liked the analysis side of things, and also the troubleshooting, because obviously when you have experiments, it's all well and good. We usually present what works, but often we have aspects where you have to understand why something hasn't worked. So that's also a very key aspect of the lab work, actually, I would say.
Yeah, I think I think just before we started the webinar, we were chatting and saying, when you're at school, it's sometimes quite hard to know what to expect out of a degree, or even what you would like to do. And perhaps it's only when you take on your own research project, maybe you find that you enjoy it in a way you'd never expected, right?
The webcam's not on.
Oh.
Can you hear you fine?
Oh, there we go. So yeah, it is kind of, you don't know that you like something until you experience it. So, but saying that, there is a lot of opportunities to do different things. So, I mean, we've been talking about research and how that's what me and Steffi have been doing, but it's not, you don't have to do research. Many of my friends have gone on and done engineering. They're working in as process engineers, and there's different options. So don't worry if
you don't have to know just yet. I think that's the key message. And I think over the kind of 3 years, a lot of people start with perhaps one idea of what they would like to do, and they completely change because they just have a talk that they find inspirational, or they have an experience that changes their mind. So I think in general, if it's very, very hard to know at A-level what you want to do for the rest of your life. So so one of the questions is, how vital is physics to the degree?
Mostly probably within the first or second year, there are some modules like thermodynamics module and some fluid flow, but it's mostly maths. I think that's what I think about it. So
just to sort of, I mean, I guess the course has changed ever so slightly since these guys have done it, and we have what's called an integrated engineering program. So the first year is really, we're taking people with a really broad range of backgrounds. So physics is not a prerequisite for our degree. We take people with 2 sciences and maths. You need to have maths for the engineering degree, certainly. And for the BSc, the rules are slightly different. Now, if you don't have physics, it doesn't matter because you're going to be studying thermodynamics. But if you think about it, we'll have tutorials where you'll get to see how those concepts are applied to biochemical engineering scenarios. So it really helps with a lot of people who perhaps the idea of studying physics is totally unappealing, but the idea of learning why is mixing so important in a fermenter to grow cells to make a therapeutic molecule is much more exciting. So I think we try and tackle it as much as possible from a discipline-specific point of view, rather than just learning sort of lots of theory of physics.
Yeah. So it's more about the application and how you would use all of these different things. It's not you need to know all these equations or that kind of stuff. It's more how you apply things, how you go about solving them.
Yeah. So I've got a question. I'll maybe ask Stefan first. So if you could give any advice to someone who's doing A levels and is sort of interested in a career.
It's a tricky question for me to answer because I've always known I wanted to do engineering, and then with the interest in more focused interest in biology, maths and chemistry as compared to physics, that really directed my choice. I would say if you're looking at the overall description of a course and speaking to people, like networking once again to get more information and more details, as long as it's interesting to you and you're motivated, you'll do fine. I mean, the most important thing is that it's what you want to do. I would say that's the key. Yeah.
Yeah, rather than picking a job you think you'll get, rather than picking a degree you think you'll get a job from, it's such that you're genuinely motivated. What about you, Maria?
So I didn't know I wanted to do engineering. So I think it's kind of the advice I would have given myself is maybe go out and do a bit more research on what actually it is, or to do it like biochemical engineering or something else, whatever it is. Like what are people actually doing with their degree? What are you going to be studying during your degree? So just having a bit more information going in.
Yeah.
So that's, you can, things like this, open days, just emailing up people, asking loads of questions,
Yeah. So and I think in terms of sort of UCAS statements and admissions, what I look for are people who've maybe read about things that we do here or other people have been doing in sort of biotechnology or stem cell therapies, and they're captivated by that. It's quite hard at A-level sort of stage to get work experience in this field, and it's something we don't expect. But when you get here, what we try and do is connect people with as many opportunities as possible to do placements and to meet people, and to also do perhaps summer internships, so that then you get much more of a flavour of what exactly you can do with the degree, but also what you would like to do. So there's some people here who never go into the lab, they never set foot in the lab. They look at perhaps technoeconomics or some of the sort of risk or financial aspects of bioprocesses. So coming back to the question about sort of lab work, if you don't enjoy lab work, and some of our students tell us quite honestly that they don't, there are other particular parts of the biotechnology industry, such as the finance and planning side, that need that understanding but don't necessarily require you to be in the lab.
Also, if you're interested in computers or programming, again, there's so much happening in that area of it with the applications in biochemical engineering. So people happily spend hours on their computers typing away codes and things. So
cool
as well. So many different things.
So perhaps, because we're just about to run out of time, so I'm going to ask.
So currently I'm not so much in the lab. So what I'm going to be doing is looking at some project work, trying to do some more timelines organization. soon going to have an intern starting, so I need to structure and exactly identify what she'll be doing, which activities she can help out with, what her project will be, and so on. And then following up with project work in terms of challenges, problems, seeing if the project is advancing, speaking to the people who are working on different aspects of the project, so working on digitalization, and checking if everything is going to plan or if we need to adjust timelines and how we can mitigate any risks.
And what are you doing this afternoon?
I'm going to be working on my literature review. So that's something we do when you start a PhD or an NGD. So just looking back at what other people have been doing in the field, and identifying key things that I could take from their experiments that I could use in my experiments, and just have the background and then plan the work that I'm going to be doing.
Okay. Sounds good. So if there's any other questions, please fire away now before we close up. Otherwise, it just remains for me to say all the best with everyone who's going through UCAS at the moment. If you have any more questions about the department, please just drop us a line. We're always happy to answer any queries that you have. Hopefully you've enjoyed hearing a little bit of an insight into the careers that people have pursued. We're going to be building some more information into our website, but in the meantime, if you have some other questions and you'd like to talk to more alumni, Georgina, who has just finished the degree programme, so she's a really recent graduate and is about to start with a large pharmaceutical company called Eli Lilly. So she is, lucky girl, in New Zealand, fantastic, but she has started a thread on the student room, so Kim has put the link in the chat box. So if you have a look for that, you can ask Georgina any questions that any burning questions that you might think of after the...
Thanks, bye.